It's not faith unless it takes faith to do it. That's a quote today from our conversation with Joel Penner, the head football coach at Dordt University in Iowa. I really enjoyed talking to Coach Penner, and I think you will too. It's coming up right now on Sports Spectrum.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am Jason Romano. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. We are the intersection of sports and faith. We bring Jesus back into the sports conversation, and we're going to do that today with Joel Penner, the head football coach over at Dordt University. I'll tell you a little bit about Joel in just a second. First, want to direct you to our website, sportsspectrum.com. That's the site to go to. Podcasts, devotionals, articles, stories, all for free on the intersection of sports and faith right there at sportsspectrum.com. Look at that as a resource for you to share the gospel with someone else, someone that maybe loves sports but needs to hear about Jesus and some of the great things that the Lord is doing in the athletes and coaches and other people in the world of sports. You can do that at sportsspectrum.com. And when you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter, Sports Spectrum Weekly. It's free. Once a week, we send an email to you updating you on all that's going on with Sports Spectrum and the podcasts and articles that you may have missed. You can do it right there at sportsspectrum.com. Just click that newsletter icon, put your email in, and you're good to go. sportsspectrum.com. Also want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Tell someone about Sports Spectrum's podcast. Maybe subscribe, like this podcast, and then share it with someone, and then leave a review. That's always a good way to get the podcast in front of other people, by leaving a review over on Apple Podcasts with Sports Spectrum. And we do appreciate you tuning into today's show. We got Joel Penner coming up. He is the head football coach at Dordt University, an NAIA school out there in Sioux Center, Iowa. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole resume because we talk a lot about Joel's journey here on the show, but let's just say he's entering his sixth season coaching at Dordt University, coming up here in 2021. Last year, he led the football program to a program best 8-3 record and a spot in the NAIA playoffs. Listen to this. 40 points they scored in 8 of the 11 games they played last year. 40 points or more, not just 40. In some cases, 50 and 60 points, 8 times in 11 games last year in 2020. Their offense was on fire, and he's really catapulted this program and helped catapult this program into some really awesome success over the past few years. So what's interesting about Dordt, though, is the mission is a little different than most schools because the mission is Christ-centered. So we're going to find out about Dordt, we're going to find out about Joel Penner, and we're going to learn a little bit about his journey, but also talk coaching and leadership, creating a culture that is successful in glorifying God and having really good success on the field. I love this conversation with Joel Penner. It's coming up right now on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Coach Penner, welcome to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
Jason, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. This will be good. I like featuring schools that may not be in the newspaper headlines every single day or on the internet every single day, but I know are doing great things, not only on the field, but for God. And Dordt is one of those schools. But for those that don't know, and I'll be honest, I didn't know until you and I connected and I started doing my research. Where is Dordt and what is Dordt all about?
Dordt is in the booming metropolis of Sioux Center, Iowa. That's a little town in the far northwest corner of the state of Iowa. And so we're a town of about 8,000 people. And if you know where Sioux Falls, South Dakota is, we're just an hour southeast of that. And so, yeah, it's like in the movie, The Field of Dreams, this is heaven, right? Iowa is. And so Dordt is a Christian university. We have about 1,500 students, and just an incredible place. I feel like it's one of the best kept secrets in private Christian education. But part of that is we're working to not be such a secret anymore. And our athletic programs have a big part in that, I think. And so, yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the story of how, I came to be here at Dordt and all that, but it's a special place with a lot of special people.
Yeah. I mean, the goal in having you on the show is because I was so interested in sort of leading a college like Dordt and the success that you guys have had on the field, and the goal to have success off the field, obviously the most important thing, and glorifying God through it. So hopefully it's not the best kept secret when we're finished with this conversation and people start listening, Joel. But let me ask you about the mission. I know you and I were talking kind of beforehand. You mentioned it's a Christian school, but I'd be curious to know kind of the mission of Dordt and if it falls in line with the mission for the athletic program and certainly for the football program that you lead. I would imagine it does. But what is that mission?
Yeah, what's really one of my greatest joys in coaching at Dordt is that we see alignment from our athletic programs to our athletic department and then to our broader school mission. And that's really rare, I think. You have to be very intentional to create that alignment, and it takes great leadership to do it. And we have that here. So when you look at Dordt's mission, we were founded in the Reformed Christian perspective, although we have students, faculty, professors, people like me who are not from a particular denomination in the Reformed Church, but beliefs line up with that. We talk a lot about equipping students to work towards Christ-centered renewal in all aspects of contemporary life. I know there's a lot of words in there, but words really mean something here. And so Christ-centered renewal is just this idea that God is doing a work of redemption in the world, and all aspects of contemporary life refer to business and politics and education, and yes, even football. And so our students here are well trained to go out and to make a difference and to be salt and light. And so central to that vision with our institution is our athletic department. And we have an athletic director who's led very well in giving us all something called the Defender Way. And we prioritize the Great Commission, servant leadership, academic development, and the pursuit of championships. And so that's athletics, way of expressing the broader mission of the school. And then even in our own football program, we've gotten even more specific with what we're really up to here. And I'm sure that'll come out throughout the rest of the conversation today. But yeah, Dordt is a unique place. I've been a bit of a journeyman at small college Christian schools. I've been in a lot of different worlds, I guess you could call it, in my coaching career. But I've not yet found an institution that is doing as good a work in terms of preparing students competently. There's a standard of excellence here, and you feel it the minute you're on campus. But then we're also very interested in helping students embrace the heart of what it means to be a Christian, and to combine excellence with a Christ-centered approach is a powerful combination. So, and
you all play in the NAIA, correct?
We are in the NAIA in the Great Plains Athletic Conference. Yeah.
Yeah. And last year was quite the year for you. It was a program best 8-3 record and a spot in the NAIA playoffs. I was going to go into this a little bit later, but let's do it now, because I think 2020 was so weird for everyone. Weird, so the best word I can kind of describe. Obviously, there's other words that you can describe as well for 2020. But you guys played in the fall a pretty robust schedule, and then didn't get a chance to participate in the NAIA playoffs until the spring. So take us through what that was like last year, I guess even into this year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to preface that response with it was hard, but compared to I think most of the world, I don't want to trivialize anyone else's situation. We got to play a season, and in the fall, we had one minor interruption in rescheduling all fall. We had to switch one bye week to another bye week. That was it.
Wow.
We got to play all of our games. I think administrating a college football season was the hard part. Just making sure, the quarantining and the testing and all that went into, we had to cancel practice for a couple of days because half our team was out. And so it was a real challenge, but I'm just grateful that we got to play a season and we made every game that we had on the schedule. But the hard part really started for us, I think, when we played our last game. We had a very impressive finish to our season, which gave us, I thought, an opportunity, an outside shot at postseason. The problem was the postseason wasn't going to start till April. Right. So in November, we had just had a shutout win and a big win. And I told the guys at 7-2, I said, hey, I think there's about a 10% chance. First, if the NAIA does playoffs, which they say they will, that we're going to be in. And I looked at our seniors and I said, this is going to be a really hard time for you guys. You guys were thinking you were done. This is your last football game. That closure of walking the field after your last game and just taking it all in. I told them, go ahead and do that, but you're going to have to hold this loosely because we might be playing again. And so, we went into Christmas break with a mentality that if there's a 10% chance that we're going to play, we have to prepare as though we are. Right. And then the NAIA didn't release their first ranking until February. And, we were not conference champs. So the only way we were going to get in is to be in the top 16 by ranking. And we were at 18 when the first rankings came out. And so not satisfied with that, I began thinking strategically, is there anything we can do to try to boost ourselves into the top 16 when we're not playing? It's hard to move up in the rankings when you're idle. Yeah. So we scheduled a game. We found, I searched far and wide to find a team that would agree to play us. And we kind of had a game that I thought was a play-in game. And we went down to Oklahoma, played Panhandle State in March. Just had about 10 days to get ready for that, which made a unique spring ball for us, like never before. And then, we played well, won the game well, and then, Selection Sunday came around 10 days later, and we were in. Mm-hmm. And so it was a really cool moment for our team, really the culmination of a lot of hard work, a lot of patience of just waiting to see, are we in? We don't know. We're going to work at this because it's the right thing to do. We all know it may not lead to us getting into the playoffs. We're going to give everything we have because there's a chance. And then when it actually happened, it was really special moment for our program, for our school.
Sounds very challenging, though, as a coach, to kind of balance a lot of different things and juggle a lot of different things, which you're doing anyways when you're a coach. But then you compound it with spring football, which is just different, right? And, in the midst of a season ending, having to restart, scheduling. I think a lot of people don't understand, like when you said, you search, far and wide to try and find a team to play. That's real, especially in the small world of football in the NAIA. But when you think back as a coach, and probably there was more tests and challenges than there ever was, what was the lesson that maybe God showed you when you think back to coaching in 2020 and even, I guess, into 2021?
For me, it was best summed up. There's a Gladiator clip. I don't know if your listeners know that movie, where Russell Crowe, Maximus, before, he's out in the arena and he's got all these guys with him. And he says to them, we don't know what's coming out of those gates. Whatever comes out of those gates, as long as we stick together, we're going to be okay. And I showed that clip to our football team in August in training camp as we were all masked and quarantined and separated all over the auditorium where we sat. And I said, I don't know what's coming this season, guys, but we need to stick together. And so that clip kind of became our mantra for the whole year. And when something bad happened, we said, hey, whatever comes out of those gates, we're ready for it because we're going to stick together on this. So I think that was probably the biggest lesson, was just giving the guys a rally cry to kind of, rally around for the season. And it gave us an opportunity to really exercise our faith. as we constantly were battling unknowns as the year went on.
Let's take a quick break to tell you again about our Sports Spectrum magazine, available now for just $18 for a 1-year subscription, just $30 for a 2-year subscription. I think it's the best thing that we do here at Sports Spectrum, and you can subscribe right now at sportspectrum.com. It's super easy. You click on the magazine icon at the website, and you're good to go. You can actually get a digital version of the magazine to complement the print version that you will get in the mail when you subscribe to the Sports Spectrum magazine. It is a great resource. I tell people the magazine, it's not your typical magazine that you just pick up and kind of peruse through. This is one that I think is a resource for you as you continue in your ministry. And whether you're a coach or a teacher or a pastor or a leader, wherever you are, whatever influence you have, knowing that you want to share the gospel, maybe use sports as a gateway to share the gospel, the Sports Spectrum magazine is a great resource for you. It might be a great resource for someone else. You can get it for yourself, get it as a gift for someone else. Maybe get a bunch and go through it together in a team setting, in a small group setting. But you can subscribe right now at sportspectrum.com. Again, $18 for a 1-year subscription, $30 for a 2-year subscription. Super cheap and available right now to order at sportspectrum.com. He is Joel Penner, the head football coach at Dordt University in Iowa. He joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. How quickly in your life did you realize that you wanted to be a coach? Because you also played, I saw in doing my research. When did coaching and the idea of becoming a coach take shape for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that I love football, playing football. When you're a kid, you play a bunch of sports and you start to gravitate toward the ones you like the most. And for me, it was definitely football. That was evident to me by the time I was in high school. And then, decent enough high school player that I got to play in college. And then as college was starting to wind down, I knew that I loved being involved in the game, and the thought of giving it up and just like separating myself from it just didn't sit right with me. And so I think it was just the thought of not being involved in the game anymore. I started to think, well, I'm probably not good enough for a professional career. So that probably isn't going to be an option. So what else can you do if you love sports, and that's when I got into coaching. I coached at my alma mater. I was working full-time in the area and was a part-time coach. And then I realized I wanted more. And so I eventually had an opportunity to coach full-time. And here we are 20 years later.
Yeah. It's funny how God directs our steps in many different ways. And the path is, straight for him, but it's kind of winding for all of us as we try to figure out where the Lord wants to take us. How about that relationship with the Lord? When does Jesus kind of come into the picture in your life?
Well, yeah. So I grew up in a home that we were a church-going family. My dad was actually a minister. So, I had a lot of exposure to the life of a Christian, and was fortunate enough to grow up in a home where that was modeled for me. But like a lot of people in that environment growing up, at some point you have to own that, and your faith needs to become your own. And for me, it was probably middle school, where it was at a camp where I had a realization that this faith idea that I could, I went to Sunday school, I knew all the answers, but it hadn't really penetrated my heart yet. And so right before high school was about the time when I started to realize that this was actually a life that it's not just there to make me happy, and it's not just there to get me to heaven. This faith idea is preparing me for a battle. Paul tells us that we have to put on armor. He doesn't use that imagery because being a Christian is the white picket fence American dream. He tells you that because when you're engaged in authentic faith in Christ following, there's a battle. And that realization kind of sunk in, and I realized if I'm going to be able to do this authentically, then I'm going to have to really own this for myself. And so ups and downs in high school, just like a lot of young Christians. You're going to go through ups and downs, seasons of growth and seasons of backsliding. And then when I got to college, you move away from home and you talk about making it your own. That's really, I think, your best opportunity, because you don't live at home anymore. And I had models, I had mentors. My college experience gave me just an incredible, just the right time at the right place kind of people in my life to get me, I guess, really solidified on this faith journey. And I've been through moments of doubt and not sure. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. Even in grad school, when I was studying theology, I had probably my biggest crisis of faith there. But the Lord has used all those seasons of life to draw me closer to Him, and just try to keep following faithfully today.
Well, you talked about putting the armor on, right, to do battle. And then you mentioned the crisis. Can you share a little bit more or deeper, if you're willing to share, about some of the battles or that crisis of faith that you maybe went through? Because I think a lot of people listening, our coaches, their families, their athletes, most of them are people who love sports and love Jesus, but loving Jesus doesn't mean the battles aren't there. Doesn't mean that we don't backslide. Doesn't mean that we're not going through trials and difficulties like so many of us. And I think when we hear other people's stories, it can encourage them where they're at. Could you share a little bit, maybe, if you're willing?
Absolutely. So I have this conviction that, let me just frame the response a little bit. This conviction that it's not really faith if you don't need faith to do it. Okay.
It's true.
That sounds like obvious, but when you think about Western Christian living, in a lot of ways, you think about this, maybe you don't articulate it this way, but a lot of people we're living to try to eliminate the need for faith. Everything we do is about building this life of comfort and ease, which in some ways removes the need to have faith. And along the way, I've become convinced that your greatest moments of growth in your life are going to be when you have to look to God and just say, I can't do it. I can't do it without you. There's no way I can live this life the way I need to without your help. And if you're never going to put yourself in those situations, you're going to, I think, never really understand what a life of faith is. So that's I guess a little backdrop for it. But for me, it was intellectual. Growing up in I would call it a theologically rich and sound and heavy emphasis on biblical truth, which I appreciate tremendously. I think I grew up with a very heady faith. And so one of my reasons for wanting to study theology in grad school was so that I could make sure to have all the right answers. And what happened was, as I began to study church history, I studied, really what has happened to Christians after the Bible narrative is done, between 100 AD and today. What I learned was that it's been a struggle, massive struggle. And we've done a lot of terrible things to each other over disagreements. And as I began to learn more about some of the divides that have taken place, I had more questions than answers. And I went to grad school with a mentality of, I want answers. I want to remove the need for faith. I want to have logical consistency. And I want to be able to answer the hard questions for myself and for others. And what I found was that the deeper you go, the more you find difficulty in solid, easy answers. And so, I was forced to either say, well, if I can't figure out God, then this isn't for me. Or I have to gain some comfortability with my Creator being so grand and so mighty that me as a finite being, I can't understand everything He's doing. and I have to be okay with that. And so that was my journey was, after I went through this low of, well, if I can't figure him out, if I can't make sense of everything, then I'm not following him. I came out of that saying, I have a deeper appreciation for how big he is. And man, I listened today to so many people who have left the faith and almost, to a person, it seems like, well, this hard topic in the Bible, it's just irreconcilable in my mind. So I'm going to leave the faith. I look at that and I say, well, this should be the reason you follow God. You can't make sense of him. If I could totally make sense of my creator, how great is he then? Right. And so that I had to go through that logical kind of death of everything's going to make sense. And me as a finite being will be able to explain the infinite. And I made it through the other side, and it's only, I think, strengthened my relationship with God.
It has to help too, now that you're a coach, but you're also a teacher and, a mentor and all of these other words that you can use, but you're at a Christ-centered school too. So that's got to be a big part of the way that you coach, and also the players knowing that God is going to be at the center of everything that you all do. But everybody wrestling with different areas, right? And maybe somebody goes through that same wrestle, but not everybody's going to go to grad school and study theology. So that has to have helped you, I would imagine, in applying that, if you will, into the way that you coach.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm very atypical. There's not a lot of people in my profession that have the degree background that I did. But when I was in grad school, I was faced with really a couple options for which programs. I just knew I needed a master's in to be a coach at this level. And what the topic of my degree wasn't critical. There was more marketable and more convenient programs I could have studied, but I felt like if you're passionate about something, just go after it, and God's going to use your passions. And so that's why I chose that program. But it is unusual for a football coach. But you're right. It has really informed my thinking about competition and about the nature of, what are we actually doing when we go out there and two teams line up and we smash into each other for 60 minutes and we keep score and there's a winner and a loser. And, I think that the depth that I've looked into that topic has really helped me to be a coach and to coach differently. And so, I wouldn't trade it.
How would you describe your coaching style? So if I was to come in and watch Joel Penner on a Saturday getting ready for a game or during practice during the week, how would you describe your style?
Yeah, that's the best people to ask that question would be my staff and my players. So hard to answer that yourself, but I want to be a demanding coach. I want to see something and then help them see it. I also want to be positive in the way that I draw those qualities out of our guys. I've been given feedback before that, coach, it's like you just are always seeing how we can get better. And sometimes it wears people out. We've had a dramatic turnaround in our football program here. I was visiting with our offensive coordinator recently, and we in our regular season we averaged 47 points a game, and
saw that.
Just an explosive year. And we're in the office thinking of it through this long spring, and all I'm doing is saying, well, let's look at some things that were not maximized this year. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, we had our best season, and we're one of the top offenses in the country statistically, and you're jumping right into how can we get better. And that's a strength and a weakness of mine. But I want to try to be a source of creating a culture of freedom on our team. I want them to see what could be, but not feel bound that if they don't get there, or if they don't reach it right away, they're going to have, someone screaming and yelling at them. So it's a delicate balance. I think you have to be demanding, and you have to have vision for the team and for your players, but you also have to give them the freedom to get there in the right time.
Yeah. I've talked to Coach Dungy a lot. I don't know which coaches that you watch or emulate or, admire from afar, but I remember Coach Dungy talking about, you be demanding, but people aren't going to care about what you know unless they know that you care. That's what I tell people. And so they need to know, your team needs to know that you care for them. I have to imagine that's something that you are intentional about in the way that you coach. Who are some of the coaches? Are there guys that you watch maybe from afar, or people who have helped you on your journey that you can kind of look back and say, yeah, I took something from that person and that person was big? Coach Dungy used to tell us on the show that Coach Knoll was his guy, Chuck Knoll, who was his coach in the NFL. And he just took what he saw from him, but he incorporated his own style. But being a follower of Christ was always going to be the driving force of how he coached. How about for you?
Yeah, I've got a lot of mentors, and some of them I know and some of them I don't know.
That's right.
I just have paid attention to them, So the guys that are probably big in the shaping of my coaching, you mentioned Tony Dungy. I have a fun story. I did have interacted with him a couple times in person, and something I'll never forget was I was I had a field access to one of their training camp practices. The year they won the Super Bowl. This was their first practice of the year. And I was just walking around and enjoying watching, Peyton Manning do his thing and Dwight Freeney do his thing and Martin Harrison. And it was really cool as a young coach for me. But then I watched Tony Dungy, the way he interacted with the team, and he didn't have a whistle. And he never raised his voice. In fact, I hardly saw him say a word. But after practice was over, he came up and we walked to lunch together, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, appreciate you being here. I know you're a college coach. Is there anything you saw today that we could be doing better?"
You said that was the year they won the Super Bowl too, right?
Yeah. And so I pulled out my list for him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Coach, you should fix this and this and this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, the fact that, I think I know he was genuine. He was serious. Just this idea, you can learn from anybody. He didn't look at, I was a 26-year-old young offensive coordinator, a no name for him for sure. And, he didn't look at me as just this little, inconspicuous coach. He said, "Hey, maybe I could pick something up from this guy." And, of course I had nothing for him except admiration.
Right.
But that always stuck with me, I've been shaped by, from a distance, John Wooden and a lot of his stuff. I really like to contrast coaching styles. I look at Bobby Knight, who's like the polar opposite of John Wooden, but I still think there's great things to take from what he's contributed to coaching.
Sure.
And then I look at my more immediate coaching circle. There's a guy named Frosty Westering, who's not a household name, but should be, because he's in the top 10 for the most all-time wins at the college level in college football. He's passed on now, but he spent 36 years coaching at a small school in Tacoma, Washington, where I got to intern a year after they won their 5th national championship. And Frosty wrote a book called Make the Big Time Where You're At. And Frosty is kind of the grandfather of the coaching circle that I come from. That mostly small college guys who, have really dived deep into this topic of if Jesus was the football coach, what would it look like? And Frosty's been a huge influence on me. And, he influenced a mentor named Scotty Kessler of mine. And then Scotty influenced my college coach, Andy Lambert. And then, I've worked for some other great head coaches along the way. But I spent 15 years as a full-time college assistant.
Right.
And so that to me, I just think that's invaluable to be ready to be a head coach. But those are some of the guys that shaped me along the way.
Tell the story of how you came to Dordt. You kind of alluded to it early in the podcast, in our conversation, but we didn't go deep there yet. And I do want to have people hear that story because you came, I think it was prior to the 2016 season, right?
Correct. So I guess the story goes back a little bit. I really saw my calling in life as being an assistant. I worked for some great people, and I really enjoyed using my gifts and my skills to support the vision that they had. And I was able to buy in and be, I tried to make myself invaluable to the head coach and support what he was doing. And
sure.
I actually had a mentor tell me early on, you're an assistant. That's your personality. That's your role. That's where you fit best. And I don't think he meant to ever say it to limit me or hold me back, but I bought into it and I believed that. And I just jumped in. I think the best head coaches are often, not always, but often are the ones that aren't in a hurry to become a head coach. The best head coaches were the best assistants. And then they were invited to a different seat at the table. And that's kind of how my story went. I really thought I was going to be a lifelong assistant. But I coached at Dordt's rival school 10 miles down the road. And during that time developed relationships over here. And so when the time was right and an opening came, they called me just because of proximity. We had known each other a little bit. I was very turned off by the idea of being the head coach here. In fact, I promised my wife that we would not ever do that.
Careful on your promises there, Coach.
Careful. No kidding. I've learned that one. But what happened was I told my wife, I think I'm going to cancel the interview. I'm not taking this job. And she's the one that said, just go. It's worth taking a shot. And I said, I don't want to waste their time. She said, well, if you got any interest at all, just play it out and see what happens. Those wise words from my wife. So she was a little shocked 24 hours later when I called her and I said, I was in a different spot yesterday than I am today. And I came onto campus and I just got so fired up with what I saw happening at this school. And I felt like the Lord I just started to burst with vision and ideas of what could be. I can't explain it other than I felt like it was almost divine. And so the big thing was I loved the school and I loved what was happening. But man, the football program, they had been 3-70 in the conference in 8 years of their existence.
3-70, not 3-7.
3-70 in 8 years.
They lost 70 of 73 games. Wow.
That's right.
Yikes.
And so do I want to sign up for this?
Right.
This is where, could be the death of my coaching career. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I was in a spot where I was beginning to question if I should stay in coaching. And it was either take the job at Dordt or I had an interview set up in a totally different career. I was getting ready to make a switch, just really for my family's sake. I didn't want to keep moving. And, I was ready to try something different. But God had other plans. And I just was bursting with confidence and vision that, man, I just think something special could happen here. And it goes back to that faith idea where it's not faith unless it takes faith to do it. I think for me, this job took a lot of faith. But from the day we showed up, it was clear that this was a really good match. And, we've been really blessed and we've been able to turn things around. And, everyone sees on the field how it's changed, obviously, but I think some of the areas of greatest joy for me are to see some of our graduates that are going out and reproducing some of the concepts and principles that we instilled while they were here. It just gives me a lot of joy to hear the testimonies of our graduates now and what they're up to.
Great. He is Joe Penner, the head football coach at Dordt University there in Iowa. Last question, Coach. What's a scripture or book of the Bible or something that God's been kind of laying on your heart, maybe something that you've been meditating on, or, something that's been encouraging you lately that you've been thinking about that maybe you could share with our audience?
Yeah. Well, I think I don't usually do this, but I had, when I got to New Year's this year, someone had introduced me to the concept of the word of the year.
Yeah. The one word. Yeah. John Gordon and those guys do that.
Is that John Gordon?
Yes.
Okay. So, I podcast, maybe that's where I heard it. I don't even know how it came to me, but it was Christmas break and, the New Year's resolution time. I'm not usually that, but I just had this idea that maybe I should do a word of the year, and cornerstone was the word that came to my mind.
Interesting. Okay.
Cornerstone. Yeah. And in fact, to keep it fresh, I don't know if you can see our listeners can't see, but on my iPad, I have a picture of a cornerstone.
Yeah.
And I've done the same on my phone all year. I've got this picture of a cornerstone. So I can remember that. And, it's this biblical idea that Christ is the cornerstone, and he's the rock that all other pieces of the building are referenced from. And you begin with and end with the cornerstone. And when you don't have a cornerstone, you don't have in ancient architecture, you don't have a straight building. You don't have a good structured, you lack foundation. And so that's been something that, I've had some health struggles in the last year. I had a pretty rough surgery with my back. I spent a lot of time not able to sit in a chair, which made coaching a season very difficult. It made checking email very difficult. Mm. God really took me through some challenges personally, and that concept of cornerstone was really, really helpful for me. So we're halfway through the year, and excited to keep going with it.
We've had a lot of coaches on who've shared about their one word. That's the first time I've heard about cornerstone, and I love it. I mean, you never want to steal someone else's word. My word for this year was simply Jesus, because I just wanted to grow closer to him, dive into the Gospels in a deeper way, and kind of just watching things like The Chosen, and just kind of grow and learn more about the person of Jesus. But I've not heard cornerstone, so that's very encouraging to me, and one I'm probably going to be thinking about for a while here too. Joel Penner, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for sharing your story. All the best to you. Hope you guys have an unbelievable 2021 season. Hopefully we have a full season. It looks like we're going to be okay this year. But just thank you. Appreciate all you're doing for the kingdom, and keep going. Thanks for joining us.
Jason, it's an honor to visit with you. I know you've had some incredible people on this show. And so to be able to visit with you is a real honor. And, I guess if I could say one more thing,
please.
When I was in grad school, I was doing research on this idea of competition and how it fits with Christianity. And it was very difficult to find resources. This was 20 plus years ago. Very difficult, but that's really changed. A lot more people have done work in this area, and podcasts like yours, just a tremendous resource, for anyone who cares about their faith in Christ and they love sports. This is a tremendous resource that you've provided. So thank you for the work you do.
Well, thank you. It's funny you say that, because that is what I've been really over in the last couple of weeks and months. I would say I've been really recognizing that this isn't just a show. I worked at ESPN for many years. Those are shows. And that's fine. They entertain you. But I really want this to become a resource, not just the podcast, but all of Sports Spectrum, for people like you and others who can say, hey, I saw this, I read this, I heard this, and it might be a gateway or an opportunity or just some kind of direction to share the gospel with someone because of sports. And certainly with Dordt, you guys have that great opportunity as well to tell people about Jesus because of sports and what you do. So let's keep going together, my friend.
Very good. Thanks, Jason.
And many thanks to Joel Penner for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. He is doing great things with Dordt University, and hopefully their football program has a great year coming up here in 2021. The football season is just around the corner, maybe a little less than a month to go, and I am excited to welcome back football into my life as I get ready to watch college, pro, even high school. I got a nephew who's playing high school football in the Orlando area in Florida this year. So I'm really excited about the 2021 football season. I want to mention one thing with Coach Penner. He's also the co-director of Coaching for Transformation, an organization that is encouraging coaches and leadership. And you guys got to go check out the website, coachingfortransformation.org. I love the title, coachingfortransformation.org. And that's what it's all about, right? Being transformed in the image of Christ as our cornerstone, which is what Coach Penner mentioned as his one word for this year. So check out coachingfortransformation.org. And again, thanks to Joel Penner for joining us here today on the show. Thank you as well. Before we say goodbye, make sure you go check out our website, sportspectrum.com. Sign up for that weekly newsletter. I'm telling you, it's a great way to stay in touch with Sports Spectrum. One email a week, I promise you. We're not going to flood your inbox with thousands of emails every day, but it's one email every Wednesday that comes to you and updates you on all that we have going on here at Sports Spectrum, because we do produce a lot of content, and you may miss a podcast or a devotional or an article or a story that we've done. That way it comes right to your email inbox, and you can sign up for free over at sportspectrum.com. Click that newsletter icon and you're good to go. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time with a brand new episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day.